Hello and welcome to the France 24 debate. I'm François Picard. Long before there was an Arab Spring, we were paying attention to Turkey's rise as a regional power, economic growth, moderate Islamists at the helm, earning Ankara admirers in North Africa and the Middle East. Now its clout's been put to the test, with Syria shooting down one of its planes and, according to Turkey, taking aim at another. A NATO member, the Turkish government has made it the alliance's problem by summoning a meeting this Tuesday in Brussels of all the partners inside NATO, while putting Damascus on alert.
We are warning the Syrian regime not to make the mistake of testing our determination and the capacity of Turkey.
And to think that just 2 years ago, Bashar al-Assad was back in good grace with his neighbors to the north. He and Recep Tayyip Erdogan had sealed free trade deals. Now, Erdogan's calling Assad a bloodthirsty dictator, and Turkey's on the front line of Syria's civil war, taking in 30,000 refugees so far, including a small but growing number of Assad regime defectors. Whether Turkey's star power in the region waxes or wanes could now depend on how it handles this crisis. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at what could be Turkey's tipping point when it comes to Syria. And with us from Ankara, Abdullah BOZKURT of Turkish English Language Daily, today's Zaman. Welcome to the France 24 debate. Let's welcome as well Laurie DUNDON.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Let's welcome as well Laurie DUNDON of the Partnership for Secure America. Thank you for being back with us. And Jonathan Paris in the flesh of the Atlantic Council. Welcome, sir. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. You can find us at François F24. Let's begin in Ankara, and correspondent Jasper Mortimer, who's also joining us for this first part. Jasper, let's just take this from the top, please. We got the news of that Turkish F-4 jet plane shot down last Friday, and then Ankara Monday claiming that a second one had come under fire from Syria. Jasper, where was that plane shot down? What was it doing?
Francois, the Turkish plane was on a routine test flight, testing Turkish radar along the limits of Turkish airspace. The radar had been recently renovated. It entered Syrian airspace. 2 minutes later, it was warned by Turkish air traffic controllers that it had strayed into Syrian territory. It then flew out of Syrian airspace, spending no more than 5 minutes in Syrian airspace. Several minutes later, it was hit by a Syrian anti-aircraft fire. It then made irregular movements consistent with the damaged plane and crashed into Syrian territorial waters. That's according to Turkey.
And no sign of the pilots so far?
No. Yesterday, Turks learnt that boots belonging to both pilots had been recovered, and there were no traces of parachutes on the scene. So it looks as if the pilots didn't have an opportunity to eject, and the pilots are almost certainly dead.
Abdullah BOZKURT, what was your reaction on Friday when you heard this news?
Well, it's kind of puzzling to see that the Syrians took the measure to that extent. I mean, nobody is expecting that they deliberately targeting an unarmed Turkish jet flying just for the training purposes in the international airspace. Just briefly made an incursion to the Syrian airspace, but that doesn't require a shooting down the plane without any warning. So that was kind of puzzling. I think that's the reason we saw the Prime Minister of Turkey today saying we have entered a new stage in Turkish-Syrian bilateral relations. He ordered the army to beef up the security along the longest border we have with Syria, almost 800-kilometer border line. And he also warned the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad not to test the Turkish resolve. That means if something like that happens in the future, there will be definitely a retaliation in kind.
And what are your thoughts? Why was that plane shot down?
My assessment is that Syria, I think, has nothing to lose anymore. I mean, the regime is almost isolated. He has some backers from Iran, from Hezbollah, from Russia, maybe. But even, you know, the Russian and the China is signaling that they might abandon embattled president of Syrian regime. So I think they are trying to signal to the Turkey that they might pull Turkey to the Syrian debacle, you know, to bleed Turkey further and create instability all over the region, including the civil war, which might definitely engulf the region, not only Syria, but Lebanon, you know, Iraq even, and Turkey, maybe other countries as well. So I think that's the game plan. And I think that's why we have seen that Turkey is taking a prudent approach rather than, you know, taking up in arms and going after the regime. He took, you know, the Turkish Prime Minister took the matter to the NATO. They submitted a letter to the UN Security Council. You know, they plead to the regional organization, trying to make the issue, you know, on a global and regional scale, rather than, you know, locking the situation on the bilateral level.
All right, so
I
Turkey.
think that's very prudent approach.
All right, so Turkey making it a multilateral issue, not a bilateral one. Let me just get reaction here with our panelists. Laurie Dunton, do you agree with that assessment on the part of Abdullah BOZKURT as to the reason why that plane was shot down?
The reason why the plane, at this point, a lot of it's murky in terms of who acted first in what moment. And so in that regard, the conflict is itself extremely touchy. We know that there's a very tense border. We know that any of these incidents could happen at any time right now with the degree of cross-border activity going on between opposition groups, Free Syrian Army and whatnot. So if one wasn't strategized, if an attack wasn't strategized, it could happen by accident, but either case could become a triggering event for further conflict.
And the fact that Ankara claims that there were shots fired at a second plane on Monday?
Seems suspicious, but like I said, I don't think it's surprising. I think it's a cautionary note of the type of conflict we're already observing. This is already a cross-border conflict. The question is whether it's going to turn into cross-border aggression, and I don't think we're there yet. And I think we see that Turkey does not want to go there.
Already a cross-border conflict. Let's say it openly. There's we know that there are insurgents who cross back into Turkey and come back across the border. Is this Syria's way of telling Turkey, look, lay off?
I think so. I think that the message has to do more with the 500-mile or 800-kilometer border than with the training aircraft that was shot down. And the proof of that is that Erdogan's statement today is, you know, he threatens force if Syrian troops go near the border. So he would like to keep the Syrian troops as far away from the border so that it becomes, in effect, a free zone for rebels and refugees to come and get out of Syria to safety in the refugee camps in Syria and Turkey.
The Turkish Prime Minister, who's talked tough in the past, 2 years ago, Erdogan warning Israel no one should test Turkey's patience after the deadly raid of a boat bound for Gaza, a raid that the Turkish leader at the time branded as state terrorism. This Tuesday, though, before Parliament, the warning was directed at Syria.
Of course, Turkey will not fall into the trap of warmongers and provocateurs, don't worry. But we are not a country which will remain silent and sit idle without doing anything in the face of an attack against our plane in international waters.
So, Abdullah BOZKURT, what is Turkey going to do about it?
Well, let's remember, this is not the first provocation we have seen from the Syrian side. We have seen in the past, across the border, provocation attacks, shooting down, two Turkish citizens. They got wounded and killing one Syrian national in the Turkish soil. They also made incursion with the helicopters, and the Turkish Air Force didn't, shoot it down. and they are providing arms and ammunition and providing shelter to the PKK terrorists from the Turkish soil. These people, crossing the border and attacking the Turkish targets. And all the time, Turkey, didn't respond in kind. But this is a new game, I think, because if you read the Prime Minister's statement, you're right. I mean, he said many things in the past. He talked tough. But this is the first time we've seen the Prime Minister saying the Syrian crisis is presenting a clear and present danger to Turkish national security. He also said the rules of engagement is changed for the Turkish military to respond to any kind of threat emerging from the Syrian side. So I think we are in the new process, new stage in the relations. What will the Turkey do? I think the Prime Minister already said they're going to provide all the support to the opposition to liberate the Syrian people from this dictator.
And is that not the case? Is that not the case already, Abdullah? The fact that they're harboring not just the Syrian National Council, the opposition umbrella group, but also bona fide insurgents who cross over regularly from Turkey into Syria.
But they are not providing arms and munitions and financial resources. We are just sheltering some 30,000 refugees. Yes, we are sheltering the Free Syrian Army. But I mean, the Turkish government is not actively providing arms and munitions and all kind of financial support to these people. I think the Prime Minister's speech today is signaling that this might change, and it will be a game changer in Syria. So I think that's the direction we are heading at the moment. Right, there are some red lines for the Turkish involvement serious in the Syrian affairs. If we see a lot of refugees crossing to the Turkish side, some people put the numbers as high as 1 million or some 500,000 people, then I think Turkey has no option but to interfere and establish a safe corridor or buffer zone within the Syrian soil. Or if the Syrian government is actively providing support to the PKK terrorists, and these terrorists crossing the border and killing a lot of Turkish citizens, then I think that we might see escalation of the conflict. But Turkey will be definitely trying to get international legitimacy, either from the NATO invoking Article 5. We are not there yet, but it might happen in the future, or getting some kind of mandate from the UN Security Council.
Jasper Mortimer, our correspondent in Ankara, you've been going to that border area since the start of this conflict more than 15 months ago. How has that border area changed over time?
François, basically, there are a lot more Syrian refugees there at the moment. And interestingly, when you talk to the refugees and ask them what they think of what they're getting from Turkey, you find them reluctant to criticize Turkey. Turkey is hosting them. But the one criticism that they do make is that they say they wish Turkey was supplying arms to the Syrian insurgents. I think that's the best proof there is that Turkey is not providing arms to the Free Syrian Army, as Abdullah was saying just a minute ago. And one thing that has surprised me is that in announcing the retaliation today, Turkey didn't decide to increase its support for the Syrian insurgents. I suspect that it hasn't done so because it fears that Syria would then unleash the PKK, which used to operate from Syrian soil into Turkey, and give greater support to Kurdish rebels fighting against the Turkish government. Secondly, were Turkey to arm the Syrian insurgents, that would be a blatant violation of Turkey's own principle of non-interference in neighbors' internal affairs.
All right. The argument for caution made, by the way, on Facebook, Osman from Istanbul saying if foregoing the slaughter of the innocent is bluffing on the part of Ankara, and if it will make us seem poor and weak, yes, we are bluffing. Capitalists and weapons traders are organizing these wars. God bless those who avoid this brutality. kind of a nod or redundant to what we were talking about at the a little earlier, where we see it escalating. Turkey, though, aware of all the pitfalls that could ensue, and in this conflict.
And I think Turkey is not the only country weighing carefully the choices, which of the bad choices, which of the poor choices that are available to take, because it's a matter of deciding how much we want to bite off and chew. We keep talking about there being limitations in international institutions, whether that's the statement of NATO today condemning the Turkish attack but not going any further than that, or deadlock in the UN Security Council. But we need to remember that each of these international dialogues is about the will of nation states to take action and intervene, and we just don't see states that are willing to jump up right now and intervene in a military conflict that's going to be messy and long-term. And without that political will, we have very limited options.
Jasper, I know you have to leave us, so I'm just going to ask you this briefly. The position of the Turkish Prime Minister, how has it evolved in your eyes as we now see the number of refugees increase to more than 30,000?
Well, early on in his premiership, Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan managed to strike a rapport with Syria's President Bashar Assad. The two men and their wives once went on holiday together. But last year, as the Syrian rebellion developed, Erdogan called Assad several times, sent his foreign minister to Damascus to talk to Assad several times, basically pleading with him to take concrete steps towards greater democracy, more openness, negotiating with the opposition to try and bring peace to the country. And Erdogan accuses Assad of paying lip service to his suggestions and not moving at all in a democratic direction. Last month, Syria held legislative elections, which resulted in the Ba'ath Party having more seats in parliament than it had previously. So those elections were clearly not acceptable. Erdogan seems to have regarded this as a betrayal of his trust, of his friendship, and has become increasingly bitter and angry with Assad for failing to move. And today in Parliament, one heard some of the strongest language that Erdogan has ever used. He said, quote, "Turkey will support the Syrian people in every way until they get rid of the bloody dictator and his gang." Now, it's not often that Erdogan uses language as strong as that.
It is strong language. Jasper Mortimer, thanks for joining us. When we get back, I'll be asking the rest of our panel about what the outside world's expecting from Turkey. This is the France 24 debate.